What is up, fellow sickos? I am the prophetic Dan Favale coming at you with the equally prophetic Mort Jensen of NBA podcast fame, of Yahoo Sports fame, of Forbes fame, and of OnlyFans celebrity. Here to record an emergency podcast. We're publishing it a day later because as certified prophets, we don't need to care about the timing of the actual news cycle because whatever we say will manifest into reality anyway. We're going to talk about the Denver Nuggets firing head coach Michael Malone and Calvin Booth while allowing the details to trickle out like the protections on a draft pick where you did not know that both of them were going to be fired at once for at least a few minutes. Before we dive in here, Mort, since we last talked like 5 seconds ago, and when we talked, we were discussing NBA coaches on the hot seat. How are you feeling?
So coincidentally, not related to this bit of news, in the very, very short time span since we last spoke, I have become sick as heck. That is just typical me. I see the sun is out, I see it's shining, and I'm like not looking at the temperature. So I'm walking around in shorts and t-shirts going, oh yeah, baby. Like I'm fat anyway. It'll absorb. I'll be warm regardless. And then Mother Nature is gonna bitch slap me and go, "What the fuck were you thinking about, you idiot?" And that means probably for the next 2 weeks, I'm gonna be a shadow of myself. But outside of that, sir, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing well too. Both of us, unlike Michael Malone and Calvin Booth at this point, are employed. Their bank accounts might read different statements here. Let's get into it. They have 3 games left in the season,
Mhm.
and they fired Michael Malone. That was the first detail to come out, by the way.
Yes. Yep.
And then the Calvin Booth news dropped, and Calvin Booth was on an expiring contract. Per reporting from The Athletic on the heels of this, there was an extension on the table, and then the Cronkies removed it, like previously over the offseason. That seems a little telltale. We've had
Yep.
noise on the record, off the record, that the locker room vibes have not been great, and it seems like things reached their nadir after that loss to the Minnesota Timberwolves, like a week and whatever ago at this point, where the Nuggets win probability was pretty high, and then Russell Westbrook happened essentially towards the end of that game. This is just before we got to tackle this one by one, and so we'll get into Mike Malone first. But just your immediate reaction to the timing of both of like this is you're cleaning house here. There's some other front
Right.
office members that have been fired. A lot of the assistant coaching staff, I believe, of the Nuggets is on expiring contract. This feels like it's setting the stage for just wholesale, like let's gut at least the management structure of this
Yep.
team.
No, yeah, you said it, this is a cleaning house protocol, right? Like what was that command that Iron Man said in
Yeah,
the third movie, right? Was that housekeeping or something along
I think
those
it was the
lines? And
house clean protocol or something. Maybe a
right,
blank slate protocol. Is that what
right,
it is?
blank slate, something along those lines. That's whatever he said. That's what the Denver Nuggets said today. Um, 3 games before the end of the regular season. So to answer your question, I was absolutely blown away. Well, first and foremost, I started laughing because you and I had literally just recorded about this, and you, being the prophet that you are, called this. I was the hesitant guy. Like, you're so kind to call me a fellow prophet. I am certainly not. I was like, Dan, come on, that's ridiculous. Like, you are the prophet here, sir. And like, so obvious, I DM'd you immediately, and I think I quoted like the link to the pod and said, this is timely. So, and after like the self promotion, because I'm shameless, then I started getting into like the analysis of it all, and it was just like, what, like how? And I have so many questions, Dan. One, did they get Nikola Jokic sign off? That's probably the first question I have. Like, that's the one I need to know. Did they go to Nikola Jokic and say, so we're thinking about blowing everything sky high 3 games before we get into the playoffs. You cool with that, man? I
You
want to know if that happened.
My guess would be maybe with Calvin Booth it happens, but if you're gonna because the Michael Malone part of this is more fascinating to me,
Yep.
just because it feels like he's more public facing than Calvin Booth, just as the head coach. Like his shots through the media are just like you have more access or impressions of his demeanor. It's clear that the relationship between him and Calvin Booth was not good, maybe
Right.
ever at this point. But if you're firing Michael Malone and you did not go to Nikola Jokic, that's malpractice as
Right.
ownership because you know that unless something has changed, Malone and Jokic have a really good relationship. And just because Jokic is among the lowest maintenance superstars, that doesn't mean that you get to keep him in the dark for something like that. Or is your plan then to trade him? That might be something that we'll have to get into later. But I found, even if you, this is where I've diverged. I was listening to some just reactions in the lead up to us recording where it's, this is the Nuggets admitting that they needed to clean house and they decided, why wait? Like, you're in the Nikola Jokic window. You need to maximize it. Why wait? Like, okay, well, then you make this decision last offseason.
Yep.
You don't make it now with 3. Like, what is, so Adelman comes in and you're putting him in. Yeah, okay, he's been with the team, but like, what are you going to, you're not first of all, press releases, post-transaction trade firing press releases in the NBA are even more useless than the 2-minute reports. They tell us nothing. And they're just these cookie cutter, like, vacuous statements. And this one was no different. We're just like, this is going to put us in the best position possible to win the 2025 NBA title. How? So this is a decision you should, the Calvin Booth of it all, I can get, because the draft process, the free agency process, that stuff is already underway. But you changing the head coach 3 games before the playoffs, or are you just sitting here saying, well, we weren't going to make it out of the first round anyway, and so we're just going to make this change now? In which case, again, why? What is Adelman going to do over the course of the next, 10 games, if you give him a playoff series, to say, oh, like, yeah, he's like, we needed this sample size to prove that he was the guy? That's why the only thing that I can come back to is Michael Malone lost the locker room, completely lost it. And maybe Jokic is included. Now, if Jokic, I would push back against that and say, even if it is Jokic is included, Mort, this is not something that happens over the past week and a half. No. This sort of marinates all season. And so why wasn't this? Clearly it was on the table, because you don't make they said in that statement that they didn't take this lightly. The timing of it, though, for Michael Malone specifically, I think is indefensible. This is either a call that should have been made last offseason, at worst earlier this season, or at this point, like, just wait. Like, that's just, it makes because you're not going to learn this. I cannot stress enough that I don't think that this increases the Nuggets' odds of winning a title even an iota.
Yep. Oh, I agree. What was the word they used? That they were hoping this would create like a jolt within the team, which, sure. Okay, guys, this to me just seems like a bunch of rich people thinking, oh, we know best, without having really the necessary insight in understanding team construction, team cohesion, personalities, like how important it is to actually have like a rhythm and a routine with certain between certain people. Yeah, like Mike might have lost the locker room, but is that something that's only becoming apparent to you now, 3 games before the end of the regular season?
Game 80.
Right. I mean, it's just like there's no excuse where I'm sitting there thinking, oh yeah, like I buy that. There's just none of it. Like I don't know if, like, I'm being a bit of a drama queen on this one, but like when I saw he got fired, my first thought was, oh wow, front office is like just crazy. Then when I saw Calvin Booth getting fired, I was like, were there fisticuffs involved? Did someone throw hands? Like, that was the first thought I had.
Were they kind of in Josh Kroenke's office and neither one of them would take blame for Russell Westbrook or something? And it's like kind of a stepbrother situation where like they're bickering and then Kroenke's like, okay, we've had enough. Maybe something like that comes out. Don't you think we could try and understand what they're doing, or we could even just destroy them for doing this now? There has to be like something else that not even the most insidery insiders know for this to be the impetus now, right? It has to be.
I mean, again, maybe not. Like, you know,
well, then let's destroy them accordingly. Then, if that's the case.
Well, see, the thing is, I think we just have to come to terms with the fact that billionaire owners, they live in a different sphere of life than we do. They think differently, and that's not meant as a compliment whatsoever. Quite the opposite. I think they tend to look at things like, oh, we can make a change. It's fine. Is it a little bit like untraditional, unorthodox at this stage? Sure, but we'll be fine. Ha ha ha. Let me have more whatever rich people eat. I don't give a fuck. Like, it seems like it's some of that.
In case you were just
right. But like, it's nuts to do this. Like, it's just nuts. It shows that ownership does not understand the emotional strings of a basketball team, which is wild considering this team actually won a championship not even 2 years ago. So like for ownership to just kind of make this decision because they felt like it at this stage, bull. I mean, that is so dumb and that is so ridiculous. Like unless there's something that directly happened within the last 24 hours, it's completely unjustifiable. Like even if he'd lost the locker room, you would have known and you would have fired him earlier. And even if you lost the locker room recently, you just kind of say, look, we have to follow through for the rest of the season. Because think about this too. What type of signal does this send to coaches around the league or outside of the league who will like for this job?
Oh,
I
for
don't
the
think,
job, yeah. But
yeah,
that's honestly, I don't know that it sends any different type of signal than we've seen. I kind of laughed when CJ McCollum talked about the dirty work of these coaches of successful teams getting fired. And I was like, hey, buddy, who helped negotiate the CBA? Like it's laid the groundwork, I think, for this impulsivity. I'm not saying that CJ McCollum is directly at fault for this, but this is you
of course
collect.
you are. Of course you are. You are hating on CJ. You are
Well,
going up
first of all,
against the
yeah,
entire player
I don't
association.
think I disagree that the players made out well in this at all. Like, I just don't. I think
Yes, great.
I think it obliterated or it really hurt the middle class and lower of that
Yeah,
of player,
I think
which
so
is
too.
typical. That's just pretty typical of society. But I do think it created this. Teams look at their franchises as like look at what Nico Harrison said after the Doncic trade. We're thinking long term, like the next 3 years.
Right.
That's
Yep.
sad. That like it's the death of long form where it's long form content now. It's not this. It's anything that's over 60 seconds. And that's what this sort of
Yep.
feels like with the NBA is because these teams, whether it's true or not, they don't want to like continuity almost becomes prohibitive because if you're good, your team gets so expensive. And let's
Mhm.
say you're willing to foot those expenses, the team building restrictions, and even I didn't understand the full consequences. I killed the Nuggets for ducking the being afraid of the second apron with KCP. But like in retrospect, you kind of look at it and the restrictions that even if you think KCP would have been better here than in Orlando, which by the way is pretty much just a fact, I
Right.
you have to look at they wouldn't have been able to do anything. But then you go back to the Nuggets, they did what with that flexibility? Like they brought in Dario Saric. Awesome. How's that working out for them? So, but this is all to say that I don't know. Yeah, this isn't a sign of a team, I guess now. I can't even call it a front office since they just gutted it, but of a team that has its stuff together. At the same time, this does feel more normal than it ever should. Like I'm caught off guard by it, similar with the Jenkins hire, but kind of look at the past 6 championship head coaches and like it's really the past 5 because Joe Mazzulla just won it. But Nick Nurse, okay, he lasts a few more seasons after 2019. He ends up leaving, I think, in 2023. Then you go to Frank Vogel, fired less than 2 years later.
Yep.
Michael Malone didn't even make it a full 3 seasons after that. Mike Budenholzer didn't make it a full 3 seasons after that. Steve Kerr, still with the Warriors, but like this is becoming sort of the turnover of head coaches. It's always sort of existed, but it feels like the bar for job security or time and space, even
Yep.
just to figure things out, is higher than ever. And I think that in part is a direct byproduct of teams that are already good and already have had to reinvest and trade in players, then traded most of their draft picks. This is the change that you would always make, but now I don't even know if you're incentivized might be the wrong word, but you're just compelled to act more brashly. I agree with what you said about this feels like being out of touch with team building, the
Yep.
coaching thing specifically. But it's also is this just going to be a symptom of how the CBA is structured and how these teams are ultimately viewing the length of their windows?
If that is going to be the new, I'll tell you the teams that are going to have staying power and like going to be perennial contenders. It's going to be the teams that have a little bit of ice in their stomachs, just in terms of like, yeah, we can go through a rough patch without having to get divorced. By the way,
Or
while
I'm
you,
sorry, but at
yeah,
least fire your head coach before the new year, like a proper organization such as the Sacramento
right.
Kings.
Well,
Kudos to them for just being the they didn't do it face to face, but you know what? The timing of it, banner stuff from them compared to Denver and Memphis.
there's an interesting tidbit from an article over at The Athletic by Tony Jones, Sam Amick, and Zach Powell. Apparently, Jalen Pickett is a good example of why this whole thing went wrong. I'm just going to read this excerpt. Malone and Booth had been at odds over everything from roster construction to the way players were used, creating tension that started to bleed into the rest of the organization. Booth wanted Malone to use younger players that he drafted and wanted Malone to stray away from using veterans for so many minutes. Jalen Pickett is a good example of this, according to league sources. Booth was dismayed that Malone went with Russell Westbrook over Pickett down the stretch of multiple games last week. On a macro level, Booth and Malone disagreed on several things. So there we have it, Dan. Jalen Pickett. Jalen Pickett, of all people, is the reason that both guys are out of the organization.
So who was Pickett Kroenke's pick? Is Josh Kroenke out here just masturbating to Jalen Pickett setting screens? I don't understand. Like, how is that? There's, as an example of some of the disconnect that clearly existed, where Malone was more reluctant to give latitude to the young players. I don't know why Jalen Pickett is the example. I think Peyton Watson would be a more, especially if you're dating back to last season, that would be a more appropriate example. Maybe even Julian Strother. I know he's dealt with some injuries since entering the league. It's sort of like, I kind of reject the idea that this is all on Michael Malone. Like, oh, we had to take the Justin Holiday club out of his bag so that he would play Peyton Watson this season. That's part of the reason why KCP is gone, so he would lean on the youngsters. Like, that's your coaches are, unless you're telling him he has job security, his job is then to win. I know they're in a slump, but like winning 50 games isn't even going to change that. Apparently, contending for a top whatever spot in the West isn't going to change that. I don't like. Do you think that this could at all be like, because both of them are gone? Do you think that there's a chance that maybe the timing is all off, but ownership is right in saying that we do need this blank slate, and it's to have a front office and a head coach that are on the same page? And yes, you could have just let Calvin Booth make the next hire, but if you don't trust him because of how he's set up your roster, which, by the way, I would probably argue that came not with the blessing of, but at the mandate of ownership. As a dude, like, if you would have told me, yeah, you could pay KCP, whatever. I feel like he would. I don't think he was trying to be the smartest person in the room. Be like, well, no, I'm going to field a cheaper team and we're going to be better somehow because maybe, but that's a special kind of ignorance that I feel like is reserved for the front office in Dallas at this point or something. I don't. The situation is just so, it's so bizarre, and this is just like, I don't know how you properly spin it.
Right. You know what happened 3 games ago, by the way, which I'm guessing would have led to a lot of internal conversations? Jalen Pickett had a triple-double and nailed 3 triples. I'm guessing that acted as a catalyst for Booth to like, look, this is the guy you need to play. Look at what this production level is. He's younger. He can do the same as Russ. I could just see that manifesting because people are in this business are petty as fuck. They want to keep their guy. They want to make sure that everybody knows this is their guy. Anyway, that's just me trying to go back a couple days and seeing where all this came from. I think it went to a head. I think this went ugly. I agree with you on every level of this. Like, I do think, to answer your question, yes, the Nuggets are better off basically saying, look, fresh slate, both are gone. There aren't anything that, like, let's say Mike Malone lost the locker room for whatever reason. Sure. Okay, cool. Like, then you can't stick with him. Like, probably should have done it at the end of the season or earlier this season, but that is what it is. If you don't trust the roster construction of Calvin Booth, if you think that his nose for talent or whatever you want to call it isn't high enough to the level of the franchise, sure. But the timing of it all just sends such a bleak picture of how ownership operates to the point where I'm like, do you understand what it takes to run a franchise? Like, should you be fired too? That's where I'm at. But I do think overall, yes, it would behoove them to have a managerial team and a coaching staff where everyone's on the same page, obviously. Like, find me a situation where that isn't beneficial. So what's the next step, though? That's what I want to know. Like,
Well,
yeah.
Can I just ask, like, how much, like, when you're kind of trying to assess the blame game here, who do you feel is more responsible for Denver's current predicament? Is it Michael Malone or is it Calvin Booth?
Booth, absolutely Booth from my perspective. Because here's the thing, he and let me phrase it in the best possible way here. if you cannot recognize the relationship that's in place between Mike Malone and Nikola Jokic, as we've heard about so many times before, if you cannot also realize that Malone is a tremendous head coach and you are trying to like force him into a corner with your specific vision in mind and you're not playing ball, and let's be real about this, communication between the two, as has been reported numerous times over, was broken. Like there was no level of communication. Then I also question your abilities as a leader. Like a general manager is the one who has to be the Mr. Personality. He has to be the one to get everyone on the same page. He has to be the one to talk to ownership, convince ownership this is the path, to convince your coach this is the right path, or find a plan in in cohesion with the coach and with the ownership level. Calvin Booth clearly failed to do so. And given that we know Mike Malone's track record as a coach is much better than Calvin Booth's track record as a GM, I'm just inclined to say, look, I want to stick with Mike Malone over Calvin Booth every day of the week.
You know what I hate about this too is now it kind of puts us in this weird position where we're already looking ahead for the Nuggets when this is a season that's still going on. And yes, we talked about head coaching hot seats the other day, but that was in the context of with the teams that were headed to the playoffs. It's, well, unless they go deep in the playoffs, like this will be a topic of discussion. And now it doesn't matter what happens. They could win the title. They're still going to go out and need to hire a head coach. Maybe it's David Adelman at that point if he leads them to a title. Or, right. And then of course you're always going to need to like put together a new front office structure. And we have kind of proof of by the way, it's funny the timing of this with Tim Connolly having the executive's option in Minnesota. We have proof that the Cronkies have never, they've paid their players. I would say that you can give them credit for that, but they've never really seemed willing to pay their execs. And so I'm not saying they go after Tim Connolly. It's just funny that he could technically be a free agent when their front office is vacant. I just hate that I don't know what to make of the rest of this season then. And like, of course, part of that is, do you think there's anything to the idea? And I don't even know if this has been mentioned, but Michael Malone came out and said like, yeah, we're hoping that Jamal Murray will be ready for the playoffs. And if you're now finding out, or you think that Jamal Murray is not going to be ready for the playoffs, isn't going to be right for the playoffs, is that why you then decide to do this? Well, it's this season. Yeah, Jokic is great, but you're not going to beat, an OKC, the Lakers, the Warriors. You're not going to beat a combination of these teams if you don't have your second most important player.
Oh, that would be a horrible perspective to have when arguably the best center of all time is having a career year.
I agree with it. I'm just like, does that factor into it at all? Like, no, Calvin Booth and Mike Malone are not responsible for Jamal Murray's health, but like, are they looking at, because I feel like to make this change, you can't honestly, but maybe I'm underestimating the ignorance of ownership, but you can't honestly think that just the upheaval is going to light a fire. You've already, first of all, where's the fire?
Yes, you can. If you're a billionaire, you absolutely can.
But what is the thinking being what? That is it just
it's a shock to this. Look, right now.
All these guys are already paid. It's like Christian Brown and Peyton Watson are trying to get who like Gordon, Jokic, Murray, even like those guys have been paid. Whose ass are you lighting a fire under?
Look, I'm not saying it makes sense, but you live in the United States. Your country right now is being run by billionaires. How well is that going?
Well, I mean,
no, I'm saying are those logical like decisions being made for the most part by billionaires, or are billionaires living their own little fantasy world thinking, oh yeah, if I only push this button, this A, B, and C is going to happen. It's going to be great. I don't think ownership are in any way smart enough to comprehend the complex emotional systems that is required, like from a basketball team from top to bottom, being that like general manager, coaching staff, like front office, coaching staff, players, player personnel, whatever. Like that is a very complicated web of relationships, of routines, of status, of everything that has to be managed. I don't think billionaires think of those things like that at all. I don't think they understand fully what that comprehends. Like, with the exception of Mark Cuban, perhaps, because he was around all the freaking time. Like, he might be the one of the exceptions, or used to be one of the exceptions. He's no longer around. For, owners who have other interests where their field of business lies elsewhere, or for
soccer in the Premier League, maybe.
that too, like they have a lot of franchises. They can't dedicate themselves entirely to the Nuggets. So I think this could easily be billionaire fuck up. Absolutely.
I don't want to frame it like this, but I don't know what changes we're expecting to see from the Nuggets for the rest of this season.
Oh, the jolt, Dan, the jolt, apparently.
Jolt, yeah. So if they don't make it to the conference finals, then do you have to trade Nikola Jokic because the jolt didn't he didn't accept the jolt? Like didn't feel the jolt?
I love your segue. I love your segue on that one because Mark Jones of ESPN said something. He said something interesting. He said, I caught wind of this last night. I believe it now. Joker is extension eligible. I'll leave that right there to marinate.
I would like to interject on two fronts here.
Yep.
The details of his contract, he has 3 years and $173.2 million remaining. Mm-hmm. There's a player option on that final season. He can decline the player option and sign a 3-year, $212 million extension this summer. That's the background. Now, my second point, before throwing it back to you, I'm trying to read between the lines on what the Mark Jones skeet is saying. I still don't know what it's saying.
I'm not either.
Are you trying to, like, from the different angles would be, are they not planning on extending him? Was he not planning on by the way, he might not sign the extension because it just let another year trickle out, sign a longer extension, in the summer of 2026. What is this? He'll leave it there. Look, Mark Jones, a trustworthy source. And no, by the way, if this was any other team, probably literally you could count on one hand the number of superstars where something like this would happen and the immediate reaction wouldn't have been, let's go through the Nikola Jokic trade destinations. It's probably Jokic and Curry, and that's it. What do you make of this?
So look, regardless of what he means, just in terms of whether he means, the Nuggets won't want to pay him like the Supermax, like the similar situation as in Dallas with Luka, or if he means that Jokic, will be extension eligible this summer, looks at this whole thing and goes, you know what, F this, I'm out of here as soon as possible. That I'm not going to comment on either or, but both scenarios would lead to him being out the door. And that's what's interesting to this. Are we looking at a situation now where Nikola Jokic might look at in the future where he's not wearing a Denver Nuggets uniform for the rest of his career? I'm just going to add some fuel to this fire by saying both he and Luka Doncic can be free agents at the same time in 2027. Just putting that out there.
Look, you're going to have to make me believe that free agency becomes cool again for that to ever be, because as of right now, the Lakers could they have cap space for Jokic? Sure. They're not going to have the trade assets for Jokic. And I would ask, what do you think is more likely? Mm-hmm. That Jokic would ask for out, leave in free agency, or the front office would, the ownership, the team would take it upon themselves to, hey, we're setting the stage for a rebuild here. Actually, what of those three scenarios, what do you think would be most likely?
So I don't think Jokic is a guy who complains. Don't mistake this as him not being interested. He will let people know his opinion, but I don't see him as a trade me type of guy. I never have.
He's not Kobe Bryant threatening to leave every other year.
Right. Exactly. I don't think that changes now either. Look, we can also ask some pretty big questions about Dallas, even though they got better and they just went to the finals. There were some pretty big questions down the line. Kyrie was getting older. Was Jason Kidd the right head coach? But you never heard anything from Luka. I will say a lot of Europeans are just wired differently that way, where it's not get me out of here. Some will go into that. Evan Fournier has requested trades beforehand, but not this. Korkmaz too, every single year. Yes, he really leaned into his American newfound life of living over there. Absolutely. But Jokic and Luka, I don't think are that type of player or that type of person. I don't think they look at it as, free agency is dead, so let's use a different way to get together. No, I think they'll just talk and do the stars align? The stars align. Cool, let's do it. I think it's that. So to answer your question, I think ownership thinking, hey, we might be able to get sounds preposterous, but like you can probably get like a couple good young players and like 10 draft picks for Jokic at this point. Like, oh my God, I'm just thinking
I
out
guess
loud here.
what's
The
interesting here is that
The Thunder could make one hell of a trade offer this summer.
my whole thing is but I do think you're right where this doesn't feel. I mean, if you wind up pushing Jokic to a point where he wants to leave, whether it's in free agency or he requests a trade, I hope
Right.
Nuggets fans storm the castle and give the Cronkies atomic wedgies, because this is just like
Yes.
this is not someone who is people mistaken for him not caring about basketball. That's not the case. It's just he's low. Like him and Steph Curry are just, I mean, even Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is just like these are just not stars that you've ever questioned whether they want to be where they are. And so
Right.
I like to do something like this. That's why I assume they have to at least let him know. But it's also why I keep coming back to, like, are they kind of gearing up to like do this themselves? Like that. So my answer to my own question was, it feels more likely that this Denver ownership would take it upon themselves to, hey, we want to start over for some reason. And I like that seems unfathomable, but so does the logic that firing your head coach and general manager with 3 games remaining in the regular season is going to give you a jolt that'll help you in the playoffs. And so it's not on the same level as the Lucas stuff, to be clear, but it kind of reinforces the, well, I guess anything is possible mindset here, because it would actually be insane to think that you need to rebuild. I know Jokic is in his 30s. It would be this is someone who's been ultra durable, plays a style that should age just fine, is the
Right.
best basketball player in the world right
Yes.
now. I just, man, and they could say this is done in service of that, and I call it bullshit, because if it was done in service of Nikola Jokic, it would have been done sooner at a
Mhm.
more opportune time, or at least in a more decisive fashion. And so your solution was, well, let's let this broken dynamic fester for 79 plus games. And then it's like, now we're going to step in. And it's like, were you not aware?
Right.
Were they so not aware of what's happening that the Cronkies only just learned about this? Like they just chop her in for March. It was like, oh, all right. Like the stuff here isn't good. We're around the team a little bit more. This isn't okay. That's also bad.
Yep. It's all bad, Dan. It's this none of this is great. None of
Well,
this is great.
I do want to take like a final
Yep.
thing to talk about for Nuggets fans that are still watching, listening, as to what they can do roster wise, like moving, like, okay, finding the right coach and the GM. The thing that I firmly believe, who is the coach, unless you believe that there's a coach out there that would have taken this roster with some of the injuries it dealt with and brought it to higher highs this year,
Right.
you have to make changes to the roster then around
Yep.
Jokic. Like I'm going to operate. I want to make it clear. I'm going to operate under the assumption that we are trying to optimize the Nikola Jokic window. They clearly don't know how to do it, but they're at least going to attempt to continue to do it. And so this summer, they could trade up to 1 first-round pick. They are going to enter about $7.1 million beneath the second apron, $11.8 million over the tax. I will say, if we get to a point where they figure out a way to dump Dario Saric and Zeke Naji without taking anything back, that's when the alarm bell should be sounding, where it's, oh, they tried to duck the tax. This isn't going to end poorly. Christian Brown and Peyton Watson are both extension eligible this summer. Jamal Murray's max extension kicks in this summer, the 4-year, 30% max. Aaron Gordon's extension, does that kick in next year or the year after? I think it's the year after.
2026.
Yeah, because he's only 22.5% of the salary cap next year. What is the path forward for this team when looking at its personnel? Unless, and look, you could say this and it's fine, that you just think it's you run it back and hope that new voices at the head coaching spot in particular
No, but that's
drive.
not realistic. That's not realistic. You're getting an
I do want to leave open, you don't think that it's possible that like a Peyton Watson or a Julian Strother or Jalen Pickett could pop with a different head coach? Like you're just not
Oh,
of
no,
that.
no, I believe that. That's not what I'm saying is unreal. Like, what I'm saying is unrealistic is getting a new GM in who doesn't want to shape a team in its own image. When have we seen
Good
a
point.
general manager come in and say, "Oh, gee, guys, I'm so glad to be here. Let's stick with 90% of the same roster," which means I didn't do anything. Like, that's not a way to stick out. That's not a way to like impress your boss by not doing anything. Like, that's just coming into the job and saying, "Oh yeah, like I'm just going to benefit off the job of others. I'm not going to do anything." So, whoever is brought in as the new general manager is going to have a vision, and that vision, I'm like, you're getting way ahead of it, I think, in terms of like, oh, like Should it be Aaron Gordon? Should it be Jamal Murray? Should they be open to training the kids? Like, I think the big question is Nikola Jokic first and foremost, and that is the biggest chip there is. Like, they are going to go out there and find a general manager. That general manager is going to come in and is going to have one of two opinions. One being Nikola Jokic is the greatest player in the world right now, and yes, would be absolute morons not to utilize that. Or he will say Nikola Jokic is the best basketball player in the world right now. Look at what we can get for him. That's going to be one of the two things. So until we know that, I just can't be bothered sitting there talking about like what the hell's going to happen with Dario Saric. Like, fuck that.
So I strongly disagree. I think that's a terrible way to look at it. Just because isn't the limitations of what they can do part of what's going to inform how they go about this next phase? Because I'm not asking who should you move. I'm asking, can this team reasonably make any sort of move where you can reorient things around Jokic? And I would even not push back, but say, like, I know some people think the Jamal Murray deal is terrible. It's probably not the best. It's not anywhere near the best contract in the NBA. But
it's tradable.
It's tradable. The dude's been balling for more than half the season, or at least half the season at this point. So where I'm wondering is that if I was someone who was pitching myself for this job, I'm going to say, well, like, maybe we shouldn't be as married because we're working within short windows anyway. Maybe we shouldn't be as married to the Peyton Watson experience. And if we start to attach him with Zeke Naji and Dario Saric, or Peyton Watson and MPJ, what does that got us? Or Peyton Watson? Like, it's just, I think I'm looking at just because I don't think you can move Jamal Murray for positive value. Like, someone will move him, but you're not going to get a haul. I'm looking at every other player on this roster, including Christian Brown, just because he's extension eligible. He's super plug and play, though, and saying, like, here's what the moves that we could do to make the team better. And there are different player archetypes that I think would serve them well. But you could also just get into you could argue that, is there a chance that if you keep kind of their starting five together, and if you're able to use Peyton Watson as a sweetener to something, like, well, if we can use him and Najee and Sharge, and we turn that into like two players who are going to round out the middle of our rotation at the 6 and 7 spots, that's what my focus would be as the job. I just don't know. Like, that seems pretty modest, I would say. And I think it's fair to push back if I'm you and argue, like, they don't even have the ability to do that.
No, I mean, look, that's something they could have asked Calvin Booth to do. Like, that's what kind of my point here. Like, what you're saying there is something that Calvin Booth could be in charge of. Like, that could be an ownership mandate saying, look, you tried. Like, Peyton Watson is good. He's nice. He's not all that. Like, whatever you built him up to be in your head, that's not who he is. So now's the time to pivot off of him or pivot off of someone else. And then what would Calvin Booth do? He would have to do it because that's what the mandate his boss has given him. So I think what is going to be the biggest indicator of what type of team this team is going to be in about 6 months. That is going to be the
three
type
games.
The next 3. But it's going to be the type of GM they pull in off the street. Like, we'll see what happens. Like, again, I just think first and foremost, that's the big question. Like, do you want to remain competitive or do you want to take a big fat sledgehammer to the whole thing?
And, I want to circle back to something you said before, because I feel like I might have dismissed it too easily. Do you think that this job is less attractive now than maybe other prospective positions because of how this unfolded? Do you think it's more about
which job, like the GM or coach?
That's a good point. I think the GM job, just because I'm looking at it and saying it would be amazing to have the opportunity to try and build a team around Nikola Jokic.
Yes.
What'd you say?
Yes, absolutely. That I think it's I can say both jobs are attractive. Like, if I'm a general manager and I get a chance to build around Nikola Jokic, oh my God, that's the part of my legacy. If I'm a head coach and I get to coach arguably the greatest center of all time, that adds to my legacy too. Like, that, these are good jobs. The only thing I hesitate about, like, the job role is ownership. Like, if they made this type of decision this late in the year, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, so I can be out at any time. Like, we're 79 games into the season. I could be on the hot seat. That's wild. Like, that's not something that would benefit me as a coach or a GM. Like, I would be sitting there going, what the fuck?
See, because coaches, I do feel like if you end up tearing it down and trading stars, there is a chance that some coaches do stick around like for that. But when it comes to like the GM, if you're tasked with coming in and building a winner around Jokic, I wonder how attractive this position specifically is because you don't have a lot of wiggle room with which to
Right.
work when it comes to assets or just salary cap flexibility.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, that's the challenge, but I would overlook that. I would basically say, look, I I got a chance to work with Jokic, and if I can't build something around him, if I can't figure out to just move a couple pieces around that makes this better, that's on me. Like that, you have to have that level of humility as well going into this, because if you fail to build around Nikola Jokic, it's pretty much on you. I'm sorry, like it is.
Yeah, and look, there's also the element of, and it's the same way for head coaches. There's only 30 of these jobs.
Right.
And as of right now, we pointed to coaching situations that might open up,
Right.
and at least one of them's correct. But like, there's not as many front office gigs that seem like they're going to open up, and so if like you're
Yeah.
just like you're going to have to take it. So
And
man,
that is why I'm throwing my name into the hat. Absolutely.
you've been as the foremost Nuggets insider who predicted this firing 24 hours before it happened. I'm going to reject your candidacy. They listen to what I say, clearly. That was eh, I'm still just like at a loss for words with this.
Yep.
This
Same.
is, I mean, and the fact that it's now happened kind of twice, like just two playoff teams, and they've got, and with, you could talk about the writing on the wall. There was less writing on the wall, not less writing on the wall, but like at least in Memphis, there was kind of the breadcrumbs of, well, they gutted his
Right.
assistant coaching staff before the season, but the timing is still inexplicable for both.
So
Do you have
who's going to
anything
get
else?
fired tonight? Can I just put money down on Rick Carlisle just for the hell of it? Because apparently that's how we do things now.
Yeah, like who's been the best coach over the past like 2
Right.
months? They're gone. Well, you know what? I was trolling you because you mentioned JB Bickerstaff's name in that podcast. I know it's not an imminent candidate, but
Right.
look, the Pistons they're not going to win 50 games this year, Mort. Like, what is he even safe?
He
I
shouldn't
think
be, right?
we did get a lot of pushback for mentioning Tibbs. They said he just signed. A lot of it was he just signed an extension. His job is safe. I don't know how you watch what happened with Taylor Jenkins and Denver most recently, how these
Right.
championship coaches have been dismissed, and think that Tibbs just getting consecutive 50-win seasons, if they don't have a convincing second round playoff berth, I like anything's on the table.
Wait. Hang on. So the argument was because he signed an extension, he's safe.
There was other, like, this is the prevailing, just the, I'll give you the bullet points of. So there's
Okay.
that.
Okay.
This is kind of the first year that this roster, it was remade, that they were together. And I would agree
Okay.
with like
Okay.
those,
Yep.
all those points are fair in an NBA that is taking into account windows that are longer than 2 years.
Mhm.
And I'm just not so sure that unless you're rebuilding, like rebuilding teams just have more of a runway now than these contenders. It's just,
Right.
yeah, there's going to be anomalies everywhere. Oklahoma City being one. Golden State, they've undergone some turnover, but like the crux, having Steph there, having Draymond there. But I just, I'm not even predicting that Tibbs would get fired, but you could between the Luka Doncic trade,
Yep.
Taylor Jenkins, and Michael Malone, just the timing of those dismissals, I think you could convince me on just about any type of transaction
Right.
happening in the NBA.
The reason I'm asking is because I don't take that into consideration, like coach signing a big deal, like a start of a new extension, whatever. Like Monty Williams signed for what, 78 million?
I
Played what, like coach for 1 year.
I
They
do
swallowed his deal.
I do agree, but I am one, and maybe it's like in that case, you knew that he probably wasn't going to find another job that would offset it. But
Right.
like Eric Spoelstra at 8 years and 120 million might be the line, right? Where it's okay, we're not going to get rid of this guy yet, but maybe not.
Yeah, because I don't think NBA teams look at that as being like, oh, that's a lot of money. I mean, again, we're talking about billionaires. Half of them, when it comes to like administrative stuff, like unless you're the Bulls, you just don't really care about what you're paying to guys not on the roster. So like, I just don't think that factors in a whole lot. The other points I agree with; those are fair. Like the contractual stuff, I just don't think teams put as much value into it
And
as people do.
in Tibbs's case, I actually think the most salient argument would be it really does feel like the front office and the coaching staff are
Mm,
on the same page, unless we find out that Leon Rose has been pleading with him to like cut minutes or play more members of the rotation, and he
right.
just hasn't. But yeah, so
Remember when you could trade coaches? I think you
you still can.
technically still can.
Yeah.
Needs to see someone do that a little bit more. I need a coach trade. I really need to see that.
Do you think there'd be any coach that would right now just leave his job for the chance to coach Nikola Jokic in Denver?
I mean, there should be. There should be several. Like Jamal Mosley. I know he's got a good thing going in Orlando and all, but
Denver's offense.
Yeah. Like that might be the guy. Like if Jamal Mosley has enough like insight into his own like strengths and weaknesses, he might look at Denver and go, "Oh, there's the guy who can save my ass because I'm really bad at drawing up offense." But here I go to this genius of basketball savant who might save my ass. Then I can focus on defense. Like I can just be a defensive coordinator, and Jokic will take care of the rest offensively. That's fine. Dream job.
I'm going to be fascinated to see who winds up on their list over the offseason of coaches that they're could prospectively hire. That's like, I'm sure Taylor Jenkins will get an interview, but I'm just wondering. Imagine if he got hired. That's what this was. Taylor Jenkins becomes available. That's who the Cronkies wanted, and they just hired Taylor Jenkins right before the playoffs. That'd be funny.
Imagine if it's someone like Mark Jackson or something. I would just
Jokic better demand a trade
immediately. Immediately. If they make one of those deals, like or if Doc Rivers shakes loose in Milwaukee and he signs there, like it's just
I would allow an interview for Jeff Van Gundy after his body of work with the Clippers. I would allow
that's fair. Yeah, no, that's fair. I think that's fair.
You have anything else, or are you able to inform our subscribers so they can find you and all the fantastic work that you do?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I would implore you not to get too inspired by what happened and not fire Grant right before the playoffs. That's
well, I don't know. We're gonna have to take his jolt pulse and just see like where that lands on the spectrum, because I want to make sure that he's headed into the playoffs with that ineffable jolt. Yeah,
exactly. So you really need to just make sure he's for it, because if not, he could be a first round exit. That's also tough. Like, do you fire him mid first round?
I might fire myself if I don't have the jolt. I think the jolt is so mission critical that if I don't think I'll have no choice but to step down.
You know what? It could also just be something out of the woods. Like maybe you not wearing a cap. That would be a jolt. That would be weird. Like that's something that would throw me off. Like that's a jolt.
So that's funny because I feel like whenever I've been podcasting with Grant, I have not had a hat on the past few weeks. So I guess with you, I put a hat on.
I don't think I've podcasted with you without. Well, so where you can find my work? You can find my work at Yahoo Sports. I have just come out with two major pieces. One on the Blazers, a team that I'm very high on, and I think they might have found their star potentially if we buy into Danny Avdiva's second half of the season. And I also came out with an enormous NBA Europe piece where I was allowed to write in the first person. So thank you, boss man, for allowing me to do that.
You are such a narcissist.
I really know. I know. I mean, I'm usually not a first person type of guy, but given the fact that I'm European and NBA is kind of my job, I was there. It was like, yep, this makes sense on this one. I actually, you know how big of a narcissist I was in that piece? I actually gave the NBA advice on how to create a league in Europe that might actually be sustainable.
Like you provided it within the piece, or you informed NBA officials of it before you published?
After I published, I actually did send it to the league. Yes.
All right.
I did. I mean, I'm not even kidding. I actually did. Look, I have a good relationship with the league. I'll send them stuff when it's about like NBA.
Yeah, but Europe, you know what? If you don't have the jolt heading into the postseason, that relationship might mean nothing. And
I know. I'm thinking about that right now. Like, if I don't have I haven't heard the reaction. They like I might wake up tomorrow to like a WhatsApp message just going, Mort, you missed the jolt on that one. Like we can't work with you anymore. It's done.
I'm pretty sure Adam Silver listens to every single one of our episodes twice. So I'm sure you'll hear from him. Yeah.
Absolutely, for sure. Like he actually subscribes to my OnlyFans. It's great.
He's actually your most generous donor too.
All right. Well, I just catapulted every single chance I had of getting an interview with him one-on-one one day. No, but you can find my work over at Blue Sky, where I share my links for Yahoo and for Forbes, and I do the Danish podcast. I do the NBA podcast. So yeah, that is what I'm doing these days.
Shout out to Mort. shout out to you. I hope everybody, as we head into the final couple games of the season, into the playoffs, just has that jolt.
Yes.
Just inside, like just come up from within them and travel through their veins and into their brain, and they're just so amped up and ready to watch.
But what if everyone has the jolt though? Is that too much jolt?
I don't think there is such a thing as too much jolt.
Right.
But I'll email the Cronkies after this and see.
Yeah, because I could just see fans be like really pissed that everyone is starting to have jolts, because it's like kind of like the 3-point thing. Oh, everyone is shooting threes. Oh, everyone else jolts now. It's not great.
Yeah, and then fans, spectators, they step on the court mid-game and now they're draining logo jumpers. Like, they just feel the jolt. They can't stop.
Right.
They're gonna have to stop running those events at the middle of halftime, or those half-court shots for whatever money. They're gonna ensure, the companies aren't gonna want to sponsor those anymore, because all these people that have the jolt, they're not even gonna touch the net on those things.
I know. It's crazy. Well, I hope you have a good rest of the day with a lot of jolt, sir.
You as well. Until next time, and as always, leave with the shout out to the one, the only, the indelible, the Jolt.